basically, it's like Nancy Rupert's calendar that she put out, and a gentleman, Don Casford, he kind of combined it with some information on the NCSBA website, which is pretty good. So basically, like you're looking at spring buildup, you have to figure out what month we're in. So we're almost in September now, right? So flip it over, September through October. Just what Chelsea was just saying, colony decrease. So what are the bees doing? They're getting the winter nest ready. So the queen's laying eggs that are going to be those bees that's going to carry us over spring. So they've got to have really good fat bodies. They've got to be healthy, and they have got to be really low on varroa mites. So they're rearing the bees for the winter physiology. What's in bloom: aster, goldenrod, smartweed, heartweed, and knotweed. And then over to the right, you see what the beekeeper should be doing in that section. So inspecting less frequently. We don't want to be in the colonies as much. We don't, if we're in the colonies of bees, we want to be in there short and sweet. Make it just go in for a reason. Why are we going in? And go in, figure out what we're doing, and get out. Because they're all about getting ready for winter. Because the bees, they think their timing is not like our regular calendar. They're ahead of us. They're always thinking ahead. So used to when Dr. Tarpey would do those Zooms during COVID time, and we were all stuck in our houses, I would listen to him. And every time he would get on the video, he would say, the bees are ahead of us. You know, they're thinking a month and 5 to 6 weeks ahead of us than what our calendar actually says. So thinking about that, we have to think a little bit like a bee. So you inspect it less frequently, harvest any remaining honey to keep the bees from eating it if you want it. Remove queen excluders if present. Why would we remove queen excluders?
Well, so the queen doesn't end up being frozen underneath them.
That's right. So the bees are going to go up towards the food. And if the queen excluder's there, the queen can't get through that. And she's going to be stuck down there. Right. So that's very good. Assess queen's performance. Is she laying really well? I've got a couple of slides in a little bit. We'll show you a comparison of a really strong frame of brood and a really weak frame of brood, just to compare opposites of, so you can just we need to see that she's doing good. Do we know how old our queen is? Did we mark her? Or do we write it down on a tablet, piece of paper or something? Do we know how old she is? Or did the bees swarm and we're not sure? And so, you know, we need to kind of think about that. If we swarmed, the older queen left and you've got a new queen in that colony. So just kind of keep up with that. Pest control, small hive beetle, varroa, wax moth, yellow jacket, and hornets are plentiful. If you haven't seen my hornet tray, you need to look at it. So I've got European hornets, I've got bald-faced hornets, and I have the yellow leg hornet that we're going to talk about a little bit. And they're darker because I didn't rinse the grape juice off of them. You know, I told you I set traps, make sure you rinse the grape juice so you can see them really well. This is the yellow leg.
Yeah, that's
European.
Has
a lot of yellow, and the bald face is the black and white one. In the hornets, you know, we're going to talk about them being in our state. We really didn't want them to be in there. But I hope that this will help you, and thinking about the bee biology, you know, just thinking about how long does it take as the bees are, the queen's laying the bees that's going to take us through the winter. And, you know, usually our bees only live 30 to 40 days are worker bees, but those that are being made now, when she lays the eggs, and those bees are being fed by the house bees, and they're thicker. They have a bigger fat body, enough for them to survive and help us. So our bees will survive through the spring. So we want them strong and healthy. We don't want them weak and you know, a lot of people say, well, my bees froze. They didn't really freeze. Their numbers just got too low, and they didn't have the capacity to keep each other warm to make it through the winter. I mean, of course they froze, but there's a reason why the numbers were so low that they got so cold. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Instead of just the cold killing.
Yeah, we lost last year, and it's like they didn't even eat the honey that was there for them.
Yeah.
To eat.
They were just too weak to get to the food.
They didn't even get to it.
Yeah.
There was food there, they just didn't never get to it.
Yeah. It's like the numbers just got way, way low. So we'll go back and start talking about a yellow-legged hornet. Unfortunately, our yellow-legged hornet has arrived in North Carolina, because you see it on the tray. It showed up in Matthews in Union County, which is just up the road from here, right? So if you all are setting traps, please check your traps weekly. Now, we were checking them every 2 weeks. Now we recommend checking them weekly and register on the card that I gave you. If I didn't give you one, let me know. But on the card, it's a newer card. These are all the insects that we're used to seeing in our state, which is great. That QR code tells you about these insects. But the QR code where it shows the nest, it shows the primary nest is a little bitty nest, and then the secondary nest is one they put in the tree. Then usually they're 80 to 100 feet high in a tree. The ones we found in Matthews, we found the little bitty nest under, you know how used to when people would build houses, they'd have these real pretty jut out windows in the front, kind of like a bay window is what they called them. They would kind of go out and cross, then they're kind of added to the house. They weren't in the house, right? So this primary nest that we found in Matthews, the homeowner had put screen at the end of under the window to keep the squirrels out, but the screen was too big and bees and hornets got in there. So the nest is in under the shingles in a bay window. So that was a struggle, difficult. And then the nest in the tree was about the size of a basketball, so it wasn't huge, but it was pretty good size, and it's about 80 feet up in a tree. So we had to hire an arborist to go up in the tree, and of course it was in a nice fenced-in backyard with a pool, so you couldn't put any equipment to run the person up. They had to actually climb the tree up there to get it. So it's difficult getting these things. They are just very frustrating to deal with, and we're trying to. Now we're working in High Point because we have had yellow lake hornets show up in front of some bee colonies, and they're hawking. And what I mean by hawking is they get in front of the colony, like say this is the front of the hive, and they're just hanging out and they're floating back and forth. And I will tell you, European hornets and bald-faced hornets, they will, if the bees are out, they'll just come by and scoop up a bee and go and eat it and take it back to the younger hornets. Well, these yellow lake hornets, their back is to the hive, and they're hawking back and forth like this. And what they're doing is they're catching the foraging bees as they come back. And as soon as they get it, they will decapitate the bee's head, get rid of it. You'll see the head drop, and then they'll land in a tree really close by, chew up the rest of the bee, and then they store it, and then they'll take it back to the nest, and then they regurgitate and give it to the brood for the baby hornets. It's interesting to see. So if I see something and it's kind of going like this, and it's facing away from the hive, I'm like, that's one. So we've been like kind of like the pool nets, we'll grab nets and scoop them up, and we've been marking them, kind of like you marking a queen. We'll put them in the net and mark them, and what we do is let them go. And what we're trying to figure out is the time, and from the time they left this feeding station, leave, and how long it takes for them to get back. So like if it took 10 minutes, we know that nest is probably 5 minutes away from the feeding station. And then we're trying to figure out a beeline as to which way, so we can find the nest and get rid of it. But we haven't been successful yet. I'm going to tell you, these insects, they like water. They like, when in Matthews, they were close to, what's the big lake over there? Is it, what's the big, y'all know the name of the lake in Matthews? I can't think of it now. But this one in High Point is by Oak Lake. So they really like a lot of water. And we don't know if people are moving them, with the primary nest being attached to a boat or a camper. We're not sure. But anyway, that's our update. Any questions about the yellow lake hornet? Our goal is still to find them, eradicate them, get rid of them.
They have the same behavior a bee does. They go in at night, don't they?
They do, and they don't like the heat. We have found out that, when it's really hot and humid, they want to work more in the mornings and late in the evening instead of in the middle of the day. So, yeah, we're learning a lot about them for sure. Y'all remember I shared this with you before. The yellow leg hornet is actually the Vespa bellatuna. The European hornet or Japanese hornet, he is called a Vespa crabrow. I'm not sure about the black and or the ball-faced hornet, what his name is. But basically, this is the same size as the ball-faced hornet, and of course, native to Southeast Asia. And so first detected in U.S. in 2023 in Savannah, Georgia, and then later it ended up in South Carolina and now North Carolina. And this is just a good view, a good picture of it. It doesn't, in the photo, it looks like it has a lot of yellow, but if you noticed in the tray, it was more darker than it is yellow. But one thing is this, we do have a wasp in North Carolina that has yellow legs, but it's not the dark at the top and the yellow at the bottom like this yellow leg hornet is. So I wanted you to notice that, the differences in the colors and the lines in it, it's just distinctive. You can see how the legs are darker at top, yellow at the bottom. So that's one way to definitely differentiate between your yellow leg hornet. This picture here is actually showing space in the bees, and that one up there too, but we are noticing they're facing out whenever they are trying to collect bees. They are a predator to our honeybees. They have the hawking behavior. They hover near the beehives and flowers to capture workers. We have found out they like pears on the pear tree. They do like pears. And we noticed, you know how pears will fall and they'll rot on the ground. And you'll see the yellow jackets and the ball-faced hornets on the ground. These insects like the pears in the tree. You'll see them flying around the top of the tree, not the bottom. And I don't know why, but we're just learning. We're learning this insect for sure. Because, you know, it's hard to tell exactly how long it takes for it to consume the honeybee that it just collected, because you got to think about that timing too before they go back to the nest. They are prey. They do prey on our honeybees, and yellow leg hornet prey was comprised of 30 to 70% honeybees. They're like the bees. This is the biology of the hornet. We are in right now, so you know we're almost in September, right? So we're in this kind of section here where we're finding them at the bees, and they've made a secondary nest. They leave their primary nest. You know, your ball-faced hornet and your European hornets, when they make a primary nest, they keep building that same nest. They don't change. But these do for some reason. They change and they'll leave, abandon that one, leave that one. So later, as the secondary nest, the queen will start laying daughter queens, and she can lay from one nest like 200 to 300 queens. So that would mean if we don't find the nest and get rid of it before this happens, she's going to, all those queens will go out and get mated, reproduction happens, and then they go to the ground, and in springtime, we're going to have that many more in that area. Does that make sense? So it's a lot of pressure on getting these controlled before it gets out of hand for sure. But that's where we're at. This is just some pictures of the nest, some primary nest at top left, and then the secondaries. Sometimes they can get really big. I have seen a picture of one that was just as wide as the back of an F-150 truck in South Carolina.
Yellow leg hornet.
Yep, yes. Yes, sir. Just shared again, found where it was found, South Carolina. This is tracks that they set out. I will tell you, in High Point right now, we have like 280 traps we're checking every couple of days. We've got USDA sent money to our state, and so we hired some temporary young people that just finished college, and they are gung-ho at going and checking traps, and we're thankful to have their help. But we're checking every couple of days, and that was about the one that was found in York County last fall. And it shows just how high they get up in the tree. Sometimes you have to get some extra equipment to get them out. It can be expensive, for sure. So we have had two areas where we have had definite yellow leg hornets. This is where we were trapping 2 years ago, where the yellow, pins were. We were trying to, stay really close to the South Carolina line, since they were in South Carolina and, Georgia. But, somehow or another, they caught a ride, and they ended up in our state. This is the old card, so it shows you the, Washington State hornet to the right, which was eradicated. There's only 4 nests of that. So reporting page, we're encouraging, Don and Glenn take care of a lot of the calls. That 200 direct calls, now we're up to about 750 calls. That's moved up quite a bit in the last little while. People are calling. A lot of times I get calls or emails, and most of the time it's the European hornet that they think it is. But I do appreciate the calls, because people are looking, they're keeping an eye out. The lady who found the yellow leg hornet in Matthews, she's not a beekeeper. She was watching her hummingbird feeder, and she noticed an insect coming to the feeder. And she was like, this doesn't look right. This isn't my hummingbirds. And then she swatted it, killed it, took a picture, and sent it in. And that's how we found out we definitely had them in North Carolina. So we appreciate anybody, and see that says no yellow hornet collected, but that's wrong. I need to change that on this presentation. That's what most of our traps look like. We hardly ever get honeybees. I won't say never. I have seen a few honeybees, especially during the dearth. They find the juice, they find that sweet smell of the sugar, and they're all excited about that. European hornets and bald-faced hornets is what I find mostly in mine. I do find the green June bugs, those hard shell. I find a lot of those in our traps, and we have the materials, which I just gave you the updated one, which is a little bit different. I like this page here because it tells the characteristics of the other insects, and it shows you some comparisons. The yellow leg hornet being the first one on the line, and it's about the same size as your yellow jacket and your bald-faced hornet. But see the colors, it doesn't have a lot of yellow in it, not like the European hornet or the cicada killer. We have trapping. We encourage you to set a trap, and it's basically dark grape juice, dark brown sugar.
And we have not found one honeybee in ours. We
That's
got 3
awesome.
traps set, and we've checked them 2 or 3 times.
Awesome.
Haven't found
No
not one
honeybees.
honeybee in it, but a
Good.
lot of moths.
Yes.
Moths love that.
Oh,
grape.
yeah.
Mine have,
Do they?
Yeah.
They say the honeybees don't like the dark, the caramel flavor in the dark brown sugar for some reason. But sign up for citizen trapping. The card that I gave you, the side that has just the yellow leg hornet. If you take a picture of that QR code, you can sign up. I know Don was saying the other day, he's my supervisor. There's 6 of us inspectors in the state, and he said, I wish more people would sign up and register and let us know they're trapping. I said, well, maybe they're waiting until they have a positive before they, register them. Because a lot of times you may just see yellow jackets and the European hornets. So the summary, it has potential to impact honeybee health and production. We don't want to hear that, because we know we deal with the varroa mite already, wax moths and hive beetles as well. In the U.S., only known in Georgia and South Carolina and now North Carolina. Eradication is still our response to this insect, and plant industry is taking steps to detect it early and develop appropriate responses. Be on the watch for the yellow leg hornet, please. And this is just a picture of how setting your trap kind of away from your hives. You don't want to put it right beside them. We don't want to encourage them. All right. Let me escape this one. So that's just the update of the yellow leg hornet, and I want to share with you a presentation. And it's basically reminders of things that we can do, inspect beehive up close and personal. Nancy started this presentation, and I've changed a few things around a little bit and going to share with you tonight. And I do appreciate you inviting me to come. I always enjoy coming over here. Don asked me yesterday, he said, "Are you going to High Point tomorrow?" And I was like, "No, I'm going to Anson County tomorrow." I was excited to say that and get away from High Point. I'll be back tomorrow morning first thing. So inspecting a beehive up close and personal and inspecting a Langstroth hive. Honey is usually more likely toward the top of the hive than the bottom. Inspect honey frames briefly or not at all. Get used to noticing general population in your hive. Most critical elements for survival is brood, food, and limited pests, and a young queen. Nice frame of brood, nice frame of food, pollen, bee bread, and limited pests. We don't want our bees to have wings that look like that. And that's just basically varroa mite syndrome, where the bee, she had too many mites on her and her wings were not formed correctly, and she probably will not fly. Inspecting a Langstroth hive, it's so funny. Sometimes I'll go to field days and somebody will stand right in front of the hive wanting to watch, and like, you got to get on the side or in the back. Stand to the side or the back of the hive. We don't want to interrupt their beeline or their flow. We want to keep them going. We don't want to slow them down. Smoke, a little bit of smoke to your entrance, maybe under the top before you open it. Think like a bee, calm and smooth, not anxious and nervous and fast and wide open. Sometimes I have to slow myself down because I'll be in a hurry and I'm thinking, I gotta get this done. And I'm thinking, these bees can feel me being anxious, just because I want to do it in a hurry. But I have a reason for going in. And I use my smoke no matter what. I mean, early spring when the nectar flow's going, bees are really calm and you don't have to use a lot of smoke. But it's better to have that smoke ready and not need it than to need it and not have it ready. Right, Mr. Retail? Mr. Ellis Hardison used to teach us that all the time. So what do y'all put in your smoke? What is your fuel? Is it pine straw? Mm-hmm.
Wood shavings.
Wood shavings?
Mostly pine straw or either cotton.
Okay. Gotcha.
Pine straw.
Pine straw.
Wood shavings, burlap bags.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
Burlap bag. Okay. What do you use?
Pine straw.
Pine straw. I do too. It's just easier.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah, we have it everywhere. My husband, he'll bag it up and put it in old deer corn bags for me and let it sit for about a year. It dries real good. It burns great. But you need to think like a bee, calm and smooth. Let them focus on their work so that we can focus on ours. As you take the hive apart to inspect, secure the supers. Stacking boxes on top of inverted top cover works well, kind of like the picture. Sometimes I'll stand them on the side if I don't have the oil trap in there. Sometimes I forget the oil trap and it'll spill out. But I like to do it like this, just kind of crisscross a little bit. That works well. That way, if the queen's in there, she's going to stay on that frame, and she's not. And usually I put the lid upside down, and then I stack my boxes in the lid. And it doesn't have to be all the way in the lid. It can be crossed, but it's pretty much, if the queen falls, I got her. She's going to be in that lid, which helps. Removing first frame. What do we do? What does our books tell us to do?
Smoke it.
Smoke it, right? But which frame are we going to move? I've got a 5-frame box and it's full of bees.
One's on the outside.
The one on the edge, right? Right, good job, good answer. So basically, put your small puffs of smoke to move the bees from where the frame grabs. Like, I'm not saying like don't smoke them out. Just a little bit, just a little puff, and they'll move. Really, I promise. You don't want to smoke them completely out and be like, But that's a nice cozy hive. And if I'm checking that one, I'm going to do the outside there. A lot of times I'll use the frame hanger, or either set it down on the ground beside me up against the hive and start working, and then I can slide and you've got room and you're not so apt to roll the queen or roll bees because they get mad when we do that, for sure. We want to have plenty of room to work. Work your way through the hive with purpose. What are you looking for? Start closing the hive when you find it. So if we're trying to, if we want to make sure that we have a nice, healthy queen, what are we looking for?
Looking for brood.
Brood pattern? Yeah, and looking for eggs, because we know she was there 3 days ago, because the biology of the bee, it's an egg up to 3 days. If we see that, do we need to keep looking for the queen?
No.
No, we close it back up. It says, don't overstay your welcome. Get out of my house, please. That's probably what the bees are thinking to us. Go away, we're doing our job. Don't need to inspect every frame. We don't often need to see the queen. As long as we see eggs or see open brood, we know she's been there recently and everything should be good. Don't be in there more than we have to be. Now, springtime is a different story, but I'm thinking I'm referring to this time of year. Handle frames carefully. Try not to flip them over too quickly. Sometimes I'll forget about it and I'll be looking like, and I'm like, oh. And it says in all of our books that we're supposed to turn it like we're opening a page on the book. You know, turning it that way instead of flipping it up, because you don't want to flip your bead. Better option, turn frames like turning the page in the book. Because, you know, if she's got an egg in there and it's just been put in there, we don't want to knock it on the side of the sail. We want it to stay perfect in there. And most of the time they do, but, you know, if we're moving real fast, we can damage some. Leave one frame out while inspecting others in the box. Frame grabbers, nice to have. I always forget to bring mine though, so I just usually end up taking one frame and sitting up against the hive, and then I start working through. And sometimes I'll be looking for the queen, and when I'm picking up frames, she's fluttered down on that frame down beside me, which is good to have there. That way she's on a frame. So some folks like to use those, use smoke to move the bees or settle them. They kind of let you know when they're tired and you've been in there long enough, they get louder. And it's like, okay, it's time for you to go now. They're being nice about it. Replacing frames and closing hive, be careful. When you're doing it, Easy does it with the first frame out and the last frame in. Every bee counts, no value to careless smashing. Combination of light smoke and gentle bumping works well. See, this beekeeper he just opened up. Looks like he's got a shim in between the two boxes. And of course we can do that, like if we're putting treatment in there, we want to give them extra room. We'll use shims for that. Working through top bar hives, don't rush, but don't dawdle. Have you ever seen a top bar hive up close, personal? You probably have, haven't you?
Yeah.
I know you've seen top bar hive. Those are very, very fragile. So like when you've got your Langstroth hive, you've got frames and you've got wood all around the square of all the comb. On the top bar hives, you only have wood on that top bar. And so that comb is hanging on, and you can't tilt it. Like, you know how we can tilt the frames and kind of look, make sure the sun's behind you so you can look in those cells and see the eggs. You don't want to do a lot of tilting with those. Those are basically, it's kind of like the page. You're turning it around for the page, but you don't want to tilt it because it's so easy to damage those. Handle with care, especially the honey frame. It looks kind of like that. And that one's pretty cool because it's got the wood. Most of the ones I see, they're just the top bars only wood they have.
And then they just build out from that top bar.
And a lot of times beekeepers will give them like the top bar, and they'll just give them like maybe an ice cream popsicle stick and let the bees draw the wax all on their own. And the thinking is that it's more natural than the wax that we give them. But it does take a while for them to do it, to draw it out. Same principles of caution and judicious use of smoke, focused inspection on those top bar hives. I really like them in some situations. I have seen some beekeepers who are who are handicapped, maybe in a wheelchair or, and there's some that you can buy that you can kind of tilt the whole, like the whole top bar here, the whole box, you can kind of tilt it and they can work the bees still, which is pretty cool. But it's hard to get the honey from them. You know, like your Langstroth, you can't sling them or put them in the slinger or the extractor. You start with a follower board or empty frame and then go over. And some of them, they're so long, you actually can put a hive and a follower board in the middle and have another hive in the second side. So they can have a couple of different hives, colonies in the same box. They fit together tightly, start with a follower board and empty frame. And same difference as the way we do. We start with the edge, take that one frame out, and then we check a frame and slide, check a frame and slide till you've got room. It can be tricky. Spacing of bars, genetics, influence comb building. Don't neglect the hive. You really have to check the hive quite a bit. You probably have to check the hive more than you check these two kids here that got in on this flower, it looks like. Because I think they're in trouble. All that on the TV. So see, if you don't check the top bar hive, they can draw some kind of wonky comb and then you end up scraping it out and then they have to start back over. So you have to be careful about that. Be ready to trim combs so frames are removable. You know, it's kind of like your Langstroth hive. If you've got a shim in and you forget to take it out early spring and the nectar flow comes on, and then you've got kind of wonky comb in that shim and then you're having to scrape it off. Just have you a bucket and scrape it and you could actually sit it out and give it back to the bees, let them take it and bring it back in and then take the shim out so that they won't draw crazy stuff. Sometimes they'll do it. Adding bars too fast might be a problem, so you have to be really careful. And if you ever taken bees out of a building or a house or anything, that's kind of what it looks like. It's just like layers of comb, and it's the natural comb that they build, just like in the picture, right? Which is pretty cool. Looking into the cells, you see the cells are kind of like that, so you have to be real careful. Natural angle, use caution, avoid turning the frame. See, that's one that's just the top bar wood. I've seen a beekeeper actually do it, and he actually did the, what do you call it's, I guess, the skewer sticks that you cook with on the grill. He actually put the sticks across and let the bees draw wax from those little thin sticks that you put the food on. And I'm like, wow. But I think his goal was just to be more natural. But that would be really hard to inspect those too, as well. Replacing the top bars and frames and closing the hive. Same principles as the Langstroth. You want to get easy does it. Best to return frames in their original location if you can. Tendency to fit like a puzzle. That's just the bottom. That looks like that's something that's in a building, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Use of smoke again. Remember the critical elements. We want hives of the hive. We want brood, food, and limited pests. Always looking for that. Checking for our queen. Most of the time you don't need to see her, which we talked about that. Don't waste time trying to find her. If you see presence of eggs, the column bees confirm her presence. If you must find her, angle frame to look. The queen will stand out. You know, it's tempting every time to look for her, but we really don't have to. And it does stress the bees out the longer we're in the colony. So you want to not be in there too long. Look for a retinue. A lot of times at the state fair, we'll have an observation hive, and the kids will be coming by, and we've got a sign on top, look for the queen. And we've got her marked so they can find her, but they don't know what they're looking for, right? So I tell them to look for the circle of bees, like the retinue, the queen's court. They're usually around her and they're facing her. And that helps them a lot. And plus that she's marked too. So that's what I tell them. Marked queens are easier to find. You know, for years I never marked them, and now I like marking them. But it's just up to the beekeeper's choice, whatever you want to do. I have new beekeepers who say, I struggle trying to find, I see my queen, I don't see her. But you really don't have to see her. As long as you see evidence that she's there, you're good. Trish Thompson, I don't know if y'all know her. She's the one she's from Union County. She talks about apitherapy, about bee stings and healing. She does a lot of programs about that. You know Trish, don't you?
Yeah.
Chelsea. She taught me how to mark the queen. A few years ago, I had a beekeeper, and she was a pottery lady, and she would actually, like if the bee was walking on the comb, she would actually just take her fingers and gently hold that queen there on the comb. She wouldn't pick her up or wouldn't take her away. She'd hold her, take out her pen and mark her and hold her for a minute and let it dry, and then she'd let go. And then the queen was marked. Well, Trish actually, she does, like if she's got the comb, say this is the comb, find the queen, she'll actually just put pressure on the queen on her back where she can't move. She's not pushing hard, but she's just pushing her where she can't move. And she marks her and holds her just a minute, lets it dry, and then she goes. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And the key is having the best pen and having that fine tip. That helps too. But it's pretty cool marking. I used to be scared to death. I was scared I was gonna hurt that queen for sure. Doing that, just like, but I would go up to Brian Fisher's and we would help see his nukes when he'd get like 400 nukes a day, and we were like a dozen of us going through hives, and we were trying to find queens. And if we found a queen that wasn't marked, we had to mark her. And I learned real quick, I better mark her fast. But that was pretty cool. Learn to distinguish healthy from unhealthy brood pattern. This is one that I really want you to notice. So it's a good comparison, healthy to unhealthy. Something's going great over here, something's not great over here. You know, we see that. There's a reason for that. Yeah, you know, are the bees stressed? Are the mite numbers too high? Is that foul brood? Could it be a European foul brood? Does it smell? We've got to use our senses. We've got to look. We've got to smell. We've got to listen. Even like when we were talking about the queen a while ago, if you open a hive and that queen's not there, those bees are loud. They are really loud. They're not happy. And you can tell that it's different. It's a different sound than what it is if you have a hive that frames to the left. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, like a swarm sound. You hear it and you know that sound, right? As beekeepers, we get that first couple years under our belt, and we're like, oh man, I can go out the door and I can hear a swarm just like that. I'm like, oh, the girls are busy. They're wanting to do it. And I try to prevent that, but sometimes it's nature. So this takes practice. Good mentor really helps. Having a mentor, having somebody you can bounce questions off of. Calling Chelsea, texting Chelsea, saying, hey, what do you think about this? You know, it's really good to have somebody. Me and my husband, we were so fortunate. We had 2 mentors. And when we first kept bees, and my husband was working out of town, he had to go to Georgia a lot. And the bees were just doing crazy stuff. And I'd call my mentor and I'd tell him what was going on. And he'd say, Shirley, I'll be there in 15 minutes. About 15 minutes, him and his buddy would pull it in the driveway and they'd help me figure out what was going on. So, you know, being a new beekeeper, it's a learning curve. It really is. And it's great to have someone that you can call. My main mentor, he just passed away about 3 weeks ago. Mr. Fred Bailey. I think he was 80. Yeah, 80 years old. Such a sweetheart. We actually had bees in his yard. He had a stroke maybe 2 years ago, and he quit keeping bees. But we kept a beehive in his yard so he could ride by on his little gator and look at the bees going back and forth because it calmed him, it relaxed him. And just like 3 weeks before he passed, we were going to check the bees, and his daughter was riding him in the cart. And we stopped and talked to him, and she texted me after he passed. She said, I'm so glad that Daddy felt good that day where I could get him out, and he got to see y'all. And I actually pulled a couple of frames out, and I walked him over to the cart so he could see how the bees were doing. He really liked to keep the entrance wide open. You know how you put your entrance reducers in? We have so many bees, so many different areas. Like there's like 10 hives in there. I just automatically leave the reducer in just because to prevent the robbing, to help the bees. And, Mr. Bailey, she told me, she said later, she said, he really wished you'd pulled that, reducer out. That just bothers him. The bees couldn't go in, they couldn't go in and out like, but he was my mentor and he kept bees years ago and that's what they did back then. But now the robins so bad, you just don't want to leave them wide open. But, that was a blessing to get to see him again. Make sure that your drone brood is in the right place. And of course, that's springtime, not really now. Our bees are throwing out the drones this time of year. I am seeing a few colonies where a few drones are still. One of them in High Point is where we're watching the yellow lake hornet. I'm seeing drones going in the hives as well. But most of them in my area, they're gone. They've thrown them out. But this is just a display. It's basically, there was drone brood a lot to the left and worker brood in the middle. And this will be a frame that we probably would need to trade out next spring because the cells are so big in there that the queen only has a choice of either putting drone brood in there or the worker bees putting honey in that because the cells are huge. And oh boy. That's one that doesn't look too well. Queen cell and drone brood. So food supply. Hive needs 1 cell of honey and 1 cell of pollen for every bee. So we probably learned this in basic bees and basic bee class. Pollen usually located in or near the brood nest. Look for rainbow of color in pollen stores. Sometimes if I don't find the pollen on that frame where all that brood is, the frame next to it has the pollen. So the bees can kind of grab it from there and use it. And we know the difference from the pollen to bee bread. Basically, the pollen is what the bees are bringing in on their legs. When they pack it in the cell, they will use honey, water, and they will their saliva to mix together to make the bee bread, which in this picture is what you're looking at, the bee bread. It's more of a shinier than the pollen color. And what it is they're preserving it. Just like when we put our vegetables in the jars to preserve for winter, they're preserving that bee bread for later because they're not going to need it right away. Practice the lift test to assess food stores. That's something you just have to get used to doing. Some beekeepers will go behind the hive and they'll lift from the back. Some actually lift from the side. It doesn't matter, just lift. If you lift and it comes up real easy, they need your help. If it's heavy and I'm struggling to get that box up, they've got food, right? I mean, it's getting used to the lift method. Is that how you do it, Mr. Chelsea? Just basically, HL, do you do the lifting to see the weight of your food? Especially,
I got scales too, but I hardly ever use them.
okay.
I usually grab the front of the box
Uh-huh.
and see how it tilts,
Mm-hmm.
how much weight's pulling on it. And usually, if you can just pick it up real easy, you're running on the light side.
Mm-hmm.
But when you pick one up and you
you
come
struggle.
about an inch or inch and a half off, and it's still like a heavy load,
Mm-hmm.
you got some weight holding in it.
Yes. And you want to do this like when it's cold weather, so in North Carolina, we're very fortunate. Sometimes it's warm in November, December, and our really cold time is January, February, March. That's when we get really cold. But even say it's almost September now, so October, into October, early November, I'll start lifting just to feel the weight, just to see if it's heavy and you can't hardly move it, they're good. They don't need to be fed. But if it moves up easy, or, and you're like, oh, I pulled that pretty easy, they need some sugar water. They say that going into the winter, and most of your books will tell you that you want to have 60 pounds of honey on top of a colony of bees. Now, it depends on how you've got it set up. Like I run 10 frame deep, double deep, 2 boxes and brood, and then I leave them 1 super full of honey, and anything above that I remove. I try to. But sometimes I may have a double deep of bees, full of bees, and they didn't make hardly any honey. So then I have to borrow from another hive that did really good and give to them, or feed them sugar water. But I prefer feeding the honey than the sugar water, just because they made it. I feel like it's theirs, and it's healthier than the sugar water. But now, don't get me wrong, sugar water will keep them alive. And so, if you don't have honey and you have to feed them sugar water, it will save you. And if it gets really cold and they're not taking liquid, the newspaper on the top and pour dry sugar on will help. Or candy boards. Some people feed candy boards. Do y'all do candy boards?
Yeah.
Do you? I've never done it, but I leave a lot. I'm really good about leaving a lot of honey on the hive, so I've never had to do the candy boards. But it's just up to you as a beekeeper. You have to decide what you're good with, what you're okay with. Now my mentor that just passed away, Mr. Fred, he would leave honey on there. He'd leave a super honey on the hive. Now his buddy JR, the other mentor, he would take every drop of honey away and feed him sugar water. And that's just the way he did, his management style. You have to figure out as a beekeeper what works for you, what you're comfortable with. But I like to do that, but that's up to you all. But practicing that lift test, getting used to that will really help us in the long run of knowing whether or not our bees have enough of food to get through the winter. After colonies are started, inspect 1 week after installation. We do that when we put nukes in or packages. We feed them whenever we first start a package or start a nuke. Feed them really good for a few weeks. Look for laying pattern food stores, evidence of pest and disease. We want to limit the pest and disease, which is the hive beetle or the wax moth. If package installed on new frames, check comb building. They really don't want to build comb unless that nectar flow is coming in or you're feeding them a lot of sugar water to get them to do comb building. This time of year, they don't want to build any comb. They're wanting to get ready for winter and survive through. So they don't want to do the comb building this time of year. And knowing comb building, it's basically, it's bees at a certain age. Not all bees can build comb. Bees at a certain age, and I think it's like 20 to 30 day, no, that's not right. That's not right. It's like 15 to 20 something is the age where they want to,
16 to 20 something.
maybe 16 to 20, something like that. And anyway, you'll have to look it up, but that's just homework. Look that up. But all bees don't want to make comb. They've got to be that certain age. They've got to be in that window of being able to draw comb. So when you're putting your package in, look for queen cells, especially with packages. A lot of times when you get packages, the bees, you get 3 pounds of bees, but the queen may not necessarily have went with those bees, and they'll let her, and when the package is installed, they'll start drawing wax and they'll let her lay, but then they'll supersede her because they don't think she is part of them. So she lays a few eggs, they'll make a queen, and they'll raise a queen, and that's kind of what happens sometimes in that situation. And sometimes the queen might be a dud or absent. She may not have a really strong pheromone, and they're like, oh my goodness. So weeks 2 or 3 of your new colonies, they should be settling in, raising brood, bringing in pollen. May or may not see cat brood yet. Probably still early. You should see the pollen going in the front door for sure. Weeks 4 to 8 of your new colony, it should be started before July, should be see some noticeable growth. Likely need to add more room. So like when your colony, like say that's a 10 frame and you start seeing them using that many frames, you want to go ahead and put another box on top. And depending on how warm it is, you could actually pull a frame or 2 in the second box just to encourage them to work up there quicker. I try to do that after we're seeing 50s at night instead of 20s and 30s. Does that make sense? Because if you pull a frame up and it gets 20 or 30 tonight, and most of these go back down where everybody else is, that brood or whatever's in those frames are gonna be dead. They're not gonna survive. So spring start, check for swarm indicators. We don't want to see all those swarm cells at the bottom of the frames. Yikes. If we do, we want to limit them to 1 to 2. If I see that, I try to go in and find my queen. And if you don't do something, a queen's going to emerge and she's going to stabbed the other queens. So it looks like in that bottom left, there's one, she emerged because she came from the bottom of the cell, but she piped. She did the piping, and then the queens in the other cells piped back at her. She stabbed them in the side and then tore it out, so that she could be the only queen. So, and this is a sign of swarm indication. It's like the bees swarmed before the new queen could emerge. So this is a brood frame, because you see the brood in the ring, but they're backfilling it with nectar, or they're backfilling with the nectar, or the nectar flow that's on, or either they're feeding them. And that would be a bad thing, because when a new queen comes back, she needs to have room to lay. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. If you saw that, you could move it on the outside frame or move it up into a new box. How about that? Isn't that cool? Yeah, that's what you call a cozy hive. They need more room, don't they? Uh-oh, this beekeeper forgot to put another box, and they had too much room, and they did the bird comb. But you know, bird comb is pretty cool. It's very pretty, fresh comb. All I would do is scrape that off, put it in a bucket, and put it in the yard somewhere where the bees can get the honey out of it, and then wait a few days, and then you can go back and get that comb, and you can melt it down and brush it on frames. You can use it, or you can melt it down and make candles.
Should you put that in the freezer after you leave it out for a while and collect it?
That's a good idea, to freeze it just a
Yeah.
little bit, just in case there's any hive beetle larvae or wax moth larvae in there.
That's what I'm
That,
saying.
to get rid of any insects that we don't want in our hives. But that's such pretty white comb. It's really pretty to make candles or chapstick with. It's pretty cool. So what's going on in these pictures? Any thoughts?
Well, that one has so much brood, it doesn't have any food around it or anything.
But that's a nice frame of,
Mhm.
and if you see a
Brood,
frame that's capped brood like that on both sides, you're looking at about 7,000 more bees in your hive in a few days, which is great, right? So over to the right, what's going on there?
Some sicklings in there.
Yes, what do you mean sicklings? You want to share, Chelsea?
That kelp brood, foul brood,
No,
no,
no. It's European foul brood.
European.
So it is foul brood, but it's one of, European. See the brown coiled?
Mhm.
When we see something like that, we know there's a problem, because we really need to see the pearly white larvae. You see a few in there that are healthy, but there's several that's not.
So if we see that, what do we do?
Call your inspector.
is that the one that makes the string?
No, that
That's
one,
American.
that's American foul brood. So that, if you put your matchstick or a stick in there and pull it, that'll make a string a little bit, like a half of an inch. But if it pulls really long, like an inch or more, then it's American foul brood. And American's the awful one. European, I see that early spring sometimes, and it's when the bees are stressed. They may not have enough pollen or enough food in the hive. And a lot of times we recommend putting a feeder directly on top of that hive and requeening. And that will help the EFB. And if it's really bad, we'll have to get the vet directive and see a veterinarian and get some medicine for it. All right, what's going on here?
Ooh,
What's on the left one?
waxy moth.
Wax moth. Good job. That webbing, right? So if you see that, you want to get that out of the colony. Like if you find it early, before the wax moths get everywhere, I would brush the bees off and put them on a different frame, and take that and put that in the freezer. Freeze it. And then after you freeze it after 48 hours, you can bring it out, let it thaw out, and you can give it back to the bees, and they'll clean it up.
They will clean
They
that.
will. They will. If they're really, really bad, I don't do it, because it's just too much work for them. But that one I would give back to them. But if you find the wax moth, and if you will be noticed, like before you open a hive, look, like say this is a colony of bees, and I'm fixing to open it up. I've smoked the front, smoked the top. I'm going to look at the back. And a lot of times on the back side, you'll see a wax moth hanging out and just squishing as soon as you see it. the high tower is really good for that. Squish that bad boy, because what they're doing is they're opportunists, they're waiting on us to open that hive so they can jump in and fly in and start laying, larvae to cause problems. So to the right, what's our problem there? Yeah, we have too many varroa in that colony. You can see it on the comb, you can see too many on the bee. And they say if you ever see a varroa mite on the back side of a bee, there's a lot under, because the varroa prefers the undercarriage of the bee, the underside. I'm almost done with y'all for this one. A bear, yeah, yeah. Sitting on the picnic table, right? He's like happy, got his belly full. Yeah.
They hunt beehives, they hunt your beehives.
They're there, he's there.
They will, in the mountains there, in the mountains, a lot of beekeepers have to put the fencing around their hives. I've had beekeepers in Cumberland County, which is Fayetteville, where they had to put, the fences around their hives. In Moore County, just several years ago, Mr. Hugh Madison had a bear, go through a couple of his hives. He had like 5 lined up, and they went through 2, and, they left, the bear left, and the next night he came back and got the other 3. So, they remember where the hives are and they'll come back. So he actually called the wildlife, and the wildlife guys come and captured the bear and moved it away instead of killing it. But, I'm very lucky, I'm knock on wood, I haven't had a bear incident in our area, but, they are around. So, any questions? Do you have any questions? Anything that I shared? Hopefully I helped you remember something that might help you with your bees.
Can you tell us the difference in the 1-to-1 and 2-to-1 sugar water while we use it?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, right.
So this is a picture of our other inspectors in the state. Don in the yellow, he's our supervisor. Anton, the tall guy beside Don, he is our newest inspector. He's over like Rowan, Cumberland, not Rowan, Cumberland, Rowan, he's in the Charlotte, Mecklenburg area. He has several counties. And John Harris, we're no relation, but we tell everybody we're cousins since we're both Harrises. John is like, I'm South Central Districts. I'm in the south of the state, in the middle. He's to the right, or I'm to the east. And then Adolphus, the far left, he's in the coastal area, like, what is it, the Ocracoke Islands up that way, or am I thinking that right? And then, Lewis, the red shirt, he is in the mountains. He's a mountain inspector. And Greg, the gentleman between me and Lewis, that's one of, our supervisors above Don. So we have a couple of different ones. This was in Sand Hills meeting, I think we had a couple of years ago at Pinehurst. But yeah, Chelsea asked me to mention the sugar water. So in the springtime, when you are giving the bees sugar water to help them, we're giving 1-to-1, 1 sugar to 1 water, for them to build comb, for them to eat and feed baby bees and survive. This time of the year, or not this time of year, maybe September, the end of September, early October, if you want to feed sugar water, we want to give 2 sugar to 1 water. And the reason being is that encourages them to pack that food into cells and save it for later. They're not going to consume it right away. Whereas the spring, the 1-to-1, they consume it quicker. Does that make sense? So that way, if they have to have the sugar water, but do the lifting